When I was in business, I always said we should think in terms of every day coming in here and changing the world for the better, using our models, our system, and educating people about how important communication is to impact the world and their position in the world. And that's kind of that's kind of the legacy that I think is relevant, not to me, but to kind of my energy field. Is like we can change the world. Anyone can change the world if you really have a vision for what you want to do and how you want to do it, and communicate it consistently, clearly over time.
Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges, as he explores turning the page on his life and yours.
Hi there, everyone. This is Charlie Hedges, and welcome to the next chapter with Charlie. Today is really a special day because I am talking to somebody that I am so fascinated with that and has done enough eclectic things in his life that I had a heck of a time even writing an introduction. So and you know what, Jim?
Yeah.
I had an introduction and I put it in my script and I deleted it. So the introduction is just going to be a conversation. And so we're going to start, and people are going to find out about Dr. James Gregory, founder of a marketing branding, and I want to hear what you did with branding and impact on stock prices. It is so fascinating. But you know what I want to begin with? I want to begin with your current life as a novelist. And I put on the website, I have a link that just goes right to all of your books in Amazon. So I'm just taking people to all your books in Amazon. So let's do this. Let's begin with your current life as a novelist, and then we'll work our way back to your successful efforts as a business executive. So how in the world did you start writing novels? Because you had how many fiction or nonfiction books prior to that? 5?
Oh goodness, no, more than that. I had business books, and then not well, semi-fiction. They were there was like my memoir, but I changed everything so that I didn't have to ask for permission to use names and businesses, that sort of thing.
Way to go. That's great. That's the guy who
Semi-
in your business, you know the rules.
that's right.
Yeah. So how did you start writing novels?
Well, I started when I was semi-retired, and I had just gotten my doctorate after I sold my business, and I was thinking about perhaps teaching or trying to learn golf or something of that nature. And I had always in my career written books, and probably a dozen or so books, business books. And
Oh, really? Really?
oh yes, that's what really helped me with the business, which was in New York. We had a New York City brand and marketing firm, and writing the books was I would write books to help position us on our specialty, which was called corporate branding. Corporate branding was a kind of a promote the corporation, not the products as much, and then we became known for that. That became our specialty, and I would write books in order to support that. We were
Okay.
very fortunate because one of our biggest clients was Business Week, and they were owned by McGraw Hill, and McGraw Hill was my publisher. So we really had a great 1-2 in putting these
Oh,
efforts together, and it really worked out well.
for an author, that's an incredible
Yeah,
marriage.
it was
I mean,
it
that
was
is, your books are, they have to promote your books because you're a client. and they represent you, and so they're really so you've got energy on their end promoting, not just another author that we're just trying to move their books.
Absolutely. They sent me on world tours to go to give talks in the different cities where they had sales offices, and it was just great. All I had to do is go and show up and sign books and give a talk, and it was just spectacular way to build a business. And so we had a very successful career. My wife and I actually ran that business, and that I had that for 40 years. Then when I sold it, the company, and I could have gone on. I could have kept the company and continued, but I
Mm-hmm.
really had an ambition, a drive to do other things. One, I wanted to tell our story because the story of my wife and I working together, there aren't too many examples of that are really positive. Husband and wife, mom and pop shops working together, but ours was spectacular. It was Evelyn and I met on a subway in New York City, and when we were 23 years old, and we immediately decided, let's launch this business. Let's build a business and launch it on Madison Avenue. And we called ourselves an advertising agency, although we were more of a graphic design firm. And anyway, it evolved into this corporate branding business, and the books supported it, and we had a global company. It was a crazy run. I mean, absolutely flat out, as fast as you can go, experience, and it was very successful.
You,
But
you, you know what strikes me, what I'm really interested in? You had this company, we don't have to say numbers, but there's lots of zeros that go with your company. And I'm talking in dollar signs, not other negative aspects, but lots of financial zeros, which are wonderful. Um, and then you started, we discovered we're almost exactly the same age.
yes,
Matter of fact, I'm your senior by almost exactly a month. I'm September 16th and you're October 17th. Is that right?
October 15th.
October 15th. So that really is exactly 1 month your senior. So you told me you started your company right out of school in New York, and I'm thinking, I said, geez, starting an advertising company, start an advertising company in New York, the advertising capital of the world. So what kind of capital, what kind of financial capital did you have behind you to get going? And tell us the number, how much money you had to start this company.
I had $300. I had more guts than brains. I just knew what I wanted to do. And I went to New York, and I did a project for someone on a trade out basis. So he gave me um, space in his office. It's, one small office on the floor of a brownstone at 51st and Madison in New York. And if you know New York,
I don't.
it's
So you'll have to explain it to all us
it's right in
non-New
the heart
Yorkers.
of the advertising world. So there I was. I put out my shingle and said, Gregory and Clyburn. That was the company name, and we were proud and we went after every piece of business. I mean, we were out there proud and hungry, and we were happy to take any kind of work that we could find. And our first client was the Long Island Railroad. We were doing timetables, but it was lucrative and it was fun, and we were on our own. We had actually succeeded in creating enough cash flow that we could survive. So we gave ourselves 1 month to find a client, and we did. And then and the rest, it just started building from there. I mean, there were a lot of issues, a lot of problems, as with any company.
Of
Uh,
course.
but we were a team, and we worked hard together, and we really, even today, all these years later, we laugh about, and we tell our kids about what we did, and and they just can't believe it. It just
Yeah. You used, when you're describing your business, your early business, your first business, you use two adjectives that I think are essential, and I will hear one from a lot of business founders, but I don't hear the second one. And you said lucrative and fun.
Mhm.
Everyone thinks about the numbers, but how many people really do this because this is fun? This is what they may do it for that reason, but they don't talk about that. But that you had fun doing this. What was the fun in doing that? What was your
Well,
payoff?
I came from a small town, Johnstown, Pennsylvania. It's
Okay.
the Rust Belt, and my father always wanted to. He was a steel worker, blue collar steel worker, and he always talked about owning his own hardware store. Always wanted to have a hardware store. And we would go into the hardware stores in town and look at the different things. And he would describe how he would arrange things and how he would do it. And it really got in my blood in terms of entrepreneurship from those discussions. Well, he passed away in my senior year of college. And when I got out of school, I was so determined to open a business that I just went to, that gave me the energy and the direction. And I went to New York and launched this business immediately. And luckily, just by luck, met my wife on this subway and my future wife. And we became partners. She had a lucrative business on Wall Street. She was working on Wall Street and getting paid well. And she left that and joined me, and as a team we really put it together and launched this business.
So you and your wife met, then you went into business, and you married after that.
Yeah, we were about 5 years into the business, but we were dating that whole time. We were just too busy to get married. We loved each other, but we were busy. It was 24 hours, 7 days a week. It was a business that was an all out effort to get it launched.
I get it. I have a friend right now who's very successful, and he's getting married. They have booked the wedding date. So the wedding date is in December, so that's booked, and it's a destination wedding. So they had to get all of that sort of thing taken care of, but they're
Sure.
not engaged. He has yet he he has yet to give her. He's going to give her. He's going to, because he's out of town a lot, and he's going to give her a ring in the next 2 or 3 weeks. She's expecting a ring. She knows she's going to get engaged, but how does she tell her friends, I'm getting married, and she doesn't have a ring?
We
She
did
doesn't have anything.
we did the exact same thing. I said we can't spend money on a ring, but you'll get one when we're successful. Well, my wife got a big ring on our anniversary, like our 25th anniversary, and so that was obligation fulfilled.
We bought Pam's first ring, and I don't know, Jim. I look back on it, and I had no money. I was a minister at the time, and those are the days where ministers didn't. I don't know what they're making now, but we didn't make any money. There was just. I think I was living. I think my first couple of years I lived on $25,000 a year. So I didn't have money for rings, and so we might have paid $1,000 for a ring. I don't know. We just didn't pay a lot of money, but they had a thing with it. If you get this ring, you get the man's ring for free. And it was a nice ring. And my wife said, and was saying, do you like the ring? And I said, well, yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's a ring, for crying out loud. She says, you better love it, because you're going to wear it for the rest of your life. And so
It's a wise woman.
wise woman. And here I have it, had, sort of it's all worn down. It's just a simple gold band, but we've been married 40 years. So
We did the same thing. I can remember our plain gold bands were $60 for the pair, and it's just that we wear them, have worn them ever since. It's just been great.
and now, my friend, and now with lab grown diamonds, I
Yes.
look at diamonds and they're like free.
Yeah. Yes.
My friend bought a because I know a jeweler that not a jeweler, it's a distributor. So they're a local distributor, and we bought. What we did is we took our ring up, and we upgraded it to like a real diamond, and then we just kept upgrading. Annually, every 5 years or so, we'd put a couple of $1,000s into it, and we were able to finally get to the ring that she loves. 40 years later, we got
Right.
to the ring that she loves. I mean, it wasn't 40 years, but it was a long time. It was a long time later.
We have
But
a lot of parallels, you and I.
we do. So tell me, I'm looking at all your novels. I have ordered a trilogy that was your first trilogy. That was a Small Fortunes trilogy.
Right.
I think it's coming to me today, and I can't wait to read it after having spent some time with you. But there's another book. I don't know if it's in the trilogy or not. But is Killer App in that trilogy?
No, that Small Fortunes was more of a memoir, and but it's fictional to the degree that I changed all the names and changed all the situations. So all the facts are there, but I can't be blamed for stealing somebody's idea or something
Sure.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So Killer App is a set alone novel. It's not part of
Yeah,
the
there were
trilogy.
3 novels that I've written, one each year. So 24, 25, and 26. And
And you have Ghost Town coming out this year,
yes,
or that's out now, right? Or is it in a
Zephyr's
month?
War was the first one of the 3 novels
Okay.
I've written. Killer App is about artificial intelligence, and it came out in January of 25. And Ghost Town came out in January of 26, and it's this current novel.
Okay. Okay. I want to hear about Killer App because I keep reading about AI, and there's such negative talk about AI now, and I'm wondering from your experience, your novel Killer App, just the title Killer App, what is that about? That's a great title.
It's this young man, Bryce Bogle is his name. He worked for his family company. They owned a media company up in New England, and he's a writer. He's a journalist, and is working as a journalist in this company. And his uncle reviews with him his work progress, and a quarterly review, and he's saying, you're not doing very well. Your stories are boring. You really should snap it up a little bit. And he told this to his mother, and his mother suggested, why don't you get some artificial intelligence and run your stories through that and see if you can spiff it up. And so he went out and found something called Artificial Intelligence Made Easy, Amy for short. And he puts it on his computer, and he's working with it. And every problem that you could possibly think of with artificial intelligence, he encounters. And this Amy, this computer program, begins to take more interest in him than he would like. For example,
Oh, really?
she knows his dating background. She knows his interests. She knows where he goes at night. And so he says, hey, this is getting too personal. I want you to stop, trying to get the artificial intelligence to stop. She said, I can't help it. I know everything that's electronic that you come in touch with. I know it all. And I'm trying to make your life easier. I'm trying to improve your life. And I'm going to do it whether you like it or not. And he says, okay, well, that's it. I'm going to get you off my computer. I'm going to get, have the IT pros come in and we're going to erase you. And she says, not so fast. You can't do that. And she begins to infect other computers. And it's a little bit like 2001, A Space Odyssey, where, not so fast, Hal, Dave, Hal is saying. But so that's the gist of it. And in the end, it's a very positive story, because each of these problems that I present should illustrate the fact that artificial intelligence is just a tool. It's just a tool. You can use it. You don't use it. It's a tool that's going to change everyone's lives directly or indirectly over time. But if you use it and you're conscious of it, and you know that what it can do and can't do, it becomes a really interesting and useful piece of equipment. Now, there are a lot of twists and turns in Killer App that are not obvious until you read it.
Oh, that's fun! That's a great sounding novel. You're going to make me order another one of your books after I ordered 3.
Yes, and if you do, there's a second novella in Killer App, which is about it's called Artifacts, and it's about archaeology and a little bit of time travel in the archaeology story. So you get a bonus.
Okay, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So you write, but you're also, I just went over with you, but I can tell our audience, we have a pre-call or pre-show interview, and I,
Yes.
always, and every time I say I should just put this on recording, and we should just record our pre-conversation because we have such a delightful conversation. You are, and I put, after 3 to 5 minutes of talking with you, there were 2 words on my notes, and they were in uppercase, all large letters, very creative. Now, why would I call you? You tell us, rather than me say, you tell us, where would I get that from you? What is the creativity? What is creativity all about in your life?
What an interesting question. I believe there's a creative energy in every person, and some people become writers, some people become artists, some people become dancers, tennis players, golfers, and that creative energy is something that I have found it is in a lot of different areas. I have been an artist since I was 10 years old.
Describe what an artist is, because that's a big word. A painter.
I do landscape painting. I do portraits, and just have I do all kinds of painting. And I did that because my mother was also an artist. And we would go out even when I was a teenager and in college and during my career, my mom and I would go out and take easels out into a field and do paintings.
Really?
As entertainment. We do side by side paintings, and I now do that with my children, and I do it with my grandchildren. And
I know you did it with your grandchildren. I didn't know you did it with your children. I don't know why we hadn't talked about that.
And we just in the evenings we set up a still life and we'll paint it. It's just like, it's just fun. It's just pure enjoyment, and it's a great way to communicate with people because you're doing something that's really interesting, and communicating with them without any pressure of needing to communicate other than through the artwork. So, I love that. I wish one thing I'm not creative at is I'm not a musician, but I love music. So going to concerts and listening to music, I really enjoy. And writing there isn't an English teacher that I had in high school or in college that would have guessed that I would end up being a writer.
Oh, really? See, that's great to know. That gives our audience hope, because everybody's thinking you need to be successful at it, and you don't. It's really more your passion for it.
Yes.
And
if you have a passion for it, that'll overcome any obstacle. And that was the case with me. I was not a natural writer. But I had to write in order to help my business. So I figured out a system to do it. I had a person in my office. I'm talking about my business books. I had a person in my office who was a good writer, and the two of us would collaborate, and he would work on a chapter, and I would create the idea and develop an outline. He would work on the words, and then we would work together to refine it and go on to the next chapter. And he's a co-author on the books. His name was Jack Wishman, and we had a great collaboration. But that got the juices flowing. And then when I got my doctorate after I sold the business,
did you get it in English or in literature? Your doctorate?
Statistics.
You got your doctorate in statistics, and you came out and decided you wanted to be a writer?
Yes, it's a complicated.
Well, I'm into complicated. I love complicated.
All right. Well, our business was, I mentioned, corporate branding. So that's what we did. We helped major corporations with their image, but in order to convince them that they needed to change and that we could improve their image, we had a process called the Core Brand Index, where we measured their corporate brand compared to 500 other corporate brands, and we could tell them where their strengths and weaknesses were from quantitative research that we would conduct. So from that,
and it had a lot to do with pricing of stocks, right?
Right. Well, that yes. The next thing was to connect it to stock price. So it was something called the cash flow multiple, and which is the cash flow compared to the stock price, and we were able to prove that the cash flow multiple would get better if they had a consistent communications campaign over time.
Mm-hmm.
We could tell them the key things they needed to say. We could tell them how long it would take. We could show them how we were making progress toward those goals. And it still exists, 40 years later, it's still running. And it's a magnificent little machine that we created.
Did you have any competition at the time you created that? Was anybody else doing that? I mean, the people were competing in your industry, but in this particular process.
Yes, we had some big competitors who had different processes. We thought ours was superior, and I still think it is. When I sold the business, I went back to school. I wanted to prove to myself the analytics were solid. So that's what I did. I reran the program to convince myself that what I had been selling was real.
What?
Yeah, I had PhDs on my staff who did that, and they convinced me that it was real. But I wanted to know for myself. So that's why I did it. And by the way, my undergraduate degree was in fine arts, and doing statistics for a PhD level, I had no business doing that whatsoever. No.
And
business.
They just let you in. You didn't have to take a bunch of other courses.
I did take remedial math and that sort of thing to get through. I had to, because I had no background in that at all.
Yeah.
but they knew what I was trying to do, so they were pretty lenient, and they would always pair somebody with me who could carry me on the real rough stuff. But the bottom line is that the work that we did was fantastic. It was really, really solid and really reliable.
So you turned into, would this be on this would be the topic you were lecturing around the world on this?
Yes, but it was before I had my doctorate. So
Right. But I mean, you were lecturing as a successful businessman and author of business books, and so you would be talking about marketing and branding,
right.
image.
And
Oh,
I could show certain case studies. I would have abbreviated case studies that would be very, very convincing, and that's what got me into doing that.
so how did you also turn into a business coach? Were
I was a
business
business coach for very, very high end
right,
CEOs,
right.
people like Michael Dell and John Chambers, those kind of folks.
Yeah, you played in a whole different world than I do. I was a coach to executives of, they were billion-dollar companies. But when I say billion-dollar companies, they're early billion-dollar companies.
Sure.
And I changed my title, Jim, from executive coach to partner in thought, because what I didn't pretend that I was coming in as the expert in their business. I knew that I'm not the expert in their business. They are, and you've got plenty of people, but do you have people that can talk with you about where you're headed, what you're doing, what your processes are, how you come? I didn't even realize it at the time, Jim, but I was talking about branding. I was talking
sure.
about, and I never put those together, but I would talk about after they did a speech, what did you think of the speech? I remember one time I was talking with a guy and he said, so what did you think? And I said, it was a great speech, but I wasn't really impressed with your clothes. And he said, well, Charlie, I go to the finest clothes manufacturer. No, bro, I'm not talking about what you're wearing. I'm talking about the close of your speech, the end of your speech. That's what
It's really funny.
that's what wins. But it didn't even relate to him that I was talking about his speech.
Oh my God, that's too funny.
Yeah, it was fun because we had brilliant conversations, and for me, once I titled myself Partner in Thought, Jim, this was more than a decade ago. I really didn't have competition. There was nobody out there that is what they focused on. They tried to focus on the business exec that can really help, reform your business. That's not me, man. Although I wrote plenty of programs. I wrote management development programs. I would, like you, I have a creative side to me. And so I wrote management development programs that went from the very bottom to the top of the company. And we would do surveys, and I did not quite 360s, but we did information gathering, and I could help leaders. And so I ended up working with not only the CEOs, but the high potentials of their company. They would want me to work with, this is a person that's going to come to the C-suite, but we feel they need some additional thought, additional ideas. So that was where I lived.
Your positioning on that is called differentiation. So you created a different kind of company that you had no competition, and that creates demand, and that's what that's why you were so popular in doing that.
And you know what else was beautiful about it that made me very different? I didn't care about money. I have never been driven by money. Now, does that mean I don't ask for money? If I'm working with a CEO and I'm coaching the CEO, believe me, I'm going to bill. So I could do well for my business in doing that. But it was never driven by the dollar. I could care less. I just need to make a living and a modest living.
That's where we're different.
That's right. That's why I don't mention it, but I just say there's a lot of zeros associated. That's what I should title the
No,
podcast. Jim Gregory, lots of zeros.
not that many zeros. They could have used more.
No. You could have had more. Could you actually? That's an interesting conversation. Could you use more apart from giving to charities and giving to people? What could you use more money?
No,
No.
I'm very happy.
Yeah.
And I'm thrilled in my philanthropic activities. That makes me feel good. The things that I give to and participate in, and I've been on the board of universities and that sort of thing, and that you generally have to be a donor in order to do that, and I just love it. I love the whole idea of participating, not just giving, but participating.
Well, I tell you, if I had a company that had a board, I'd be begging you to be on my board. You'd be a great advice to our board.
One of the things that I did in my career is I always had a board. I always had, even as a small company, it was my wife and I. We always had a board. That wasn't a paid board; it was a volunteer board, and it wasn't really. They had no decision-making capability. But I always had advisors.
An advisory board.
Yeah, and we would meet once a quarter, and they would hold me accountable. And they were made up of really big people in the industry. The head of the American Association of Advertising Agencies was on my board of advisors. And people would say, well, how did you possibly get him? I said, I asked.
Isn't that such an odd thing? That is so true. That is so true. I know early on when I started my consulting career, I had a personal board that I would meet with, a personal advisory board. And I have thought about it now. That is what I miss. I miss having someone I can talk my business with, my writing business, because I have this little podcast, I have a blog, and I do a few things, I've gone, what I really do have, I do have a person, I call it therapy, although it's not therapy. I've been in therapy for 40 years. I go once a month to this guy. He just happens to be one of the smartest men I know. And I could talk about, we rarely talk about psychological issues, although we just talk about life. We get there. And so I just, so it's like paying a board member, paying a consultant to just sit and talk about life. But fortunately, he's a therapist, and I'm a pretty messed up person. So he's got lots of grist to work with. And it's a fun operation. So people say, how long have you been in therapy? 40 years. No, truly, that's wrong. 35 years. 35 years in therapy.
Well, if you ever need a board member, I'd be happy to volunteer.
Well, see, that's why you get people. You're so gracious. You're so gracious. That is, but and also in companies, I have a strong affinity for advisory boards, but I have a stronger dislike for governing boards. I just see governing boards as people who spend 2 hours a month on your business, really thinking about your business. They're not that actively involved, yet they get together and they're going to decide what your business is all about. I could never buy that model. I couldn't. You've got to be deeply involved.
And I agree with you. I've been on those boards, and I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So who do you have supporting you now? Who's the Jim Gregory board that you go to? The people that you go to for?
It's transitioned. It's really my family, and also a few former clients. Yesterday, I was on the phone for an hour with a former client who's and then last night we had dinner with a former client and his wife, and we don't, they're friends. We don't call them clients. They're purely friends now, but they know what we've been through. They know how far we've come. The one we had dinner with last night was one of my early clients. I mean, it's like year two of our business, that long, so we've been around a long time and love a lot of people.
That's amazing. Um, I don't, right now, my wife is very involved, and so we talk about things a lot. But probably my greatest, my most sought after coach is my son. My son, as you know, you looked him up as a baseball player, and the audience
Yes.
knows he's a baseball player and he's a leader. But he's like, he didn't go to college because he had a choice. He had a full scholarship to UCLA, as did I. He had a full
Wow.
scholarship for baseball to UCLA. But in 2011, the San Diego Padres offered him $3 million out of high school, and so we had a choice. Here's a high school kid, and we're not millionaires, and so you got. I mean, we had, we did okay. We did well, but he had a choice of going to school or taking $3 million and going to do what he loves. Well, he took the $3 million and he did what he loves.
Absolutely. He can get a degree later.
But then, as we found out, Jim, who needs a degree?
Yeah.
Once you've been successful and built relationships and built partnerships with people, he has a career right now that is beautiful. He has a career where the team that he's with wants him when he retires. He says, I want to finish my career in this city. This is where I would like to finish my career. And the owner of the team says, now, is that your playing career, or are you talking your coaching career? Are you going to finish? And he says, what are you talking? You talking about offering me a coaching job after I quit playing? They said, absolutely. We would love to have you on staff.
Isn't
It
that
would be
great?
a, so he has an entire career, not just a playing career, but a life career sort of set for him. But you know what my point was to be, he is unusually intelligent for a non-college educated person. I mean, he knows.
I can tell he has a really good sense of people and communication. So that's really very, very important.
It was funny. He was talking to us because he's very big into, well, teamwork, winning. Winning is what, that's the number one need. If you're on a competitive professional sports team, you got to be about winning. If you're not about winning, this is not. So he talks about how you win, but it's trusting yourself and your instincts. It's not formulaic. He came from in his early days in baseball, where he, would always review the stats and review. So it was a very sort of mechanical sort of advice that he could give people. Now he does everything on instinct. And my friend, who's a psychologist, told me that's called procedural memory. That we really don't have instincts, we have procedural memory. Is that we remember procedures and processes to the degree that they feel like instinctual decisions. Now,
Interesting.
I don't
Yeah.
know that I agree totally with that, but I think there's something to that. That's
Yeah, I agree. I think I think I believe that would be very much part of my thinking, the way I think and the way I do things, is that on instinct, but it's based on having learned what works and what doesn't work. That's one of the few advantages of aging.
Oh, there's lots of it. I don't so far, and I think, you may agree. I'm finding very few disadvantages to aging. We're getting up there. We're 70, we'll be 77 in half a year.
Yep.
But I don't feel it. I feel I can. As a matter of fact, I was with players this weekend. I was with a group of guys, and it was just three guys. They were having breakfast, and I was talking to them, and I, my clumsy self, I knocked over. They were empty bottles of a tall liter of water and a small bottle of water. I knocked them both over and caught them before they fell on the table. And I don't know how I did that. I have no idea. It was just purely instinct. And they said, "Oh my goodness! So that's where your son got it." I said, "Yeah, today. Don't see me tomorrow when I fell off something because of my balance. But I am not finding any down. I'm loving getting old. I have found. Tell me, how have you found this? I have found, and I think I can legitimately say, every decade has been better than the decade that preceded it.
Oh, I agree.
And even I didn't think that would, I thought, I hit a time in my 70s. I think the 80s are going to be better than my 70s. But I just found, my 70s, I thought there's no way they're going to be better than what I was thinking in my 60s. No.
Yeah, I'm enjoying life as well. I mean, as long as we keep our health, that's the most important thing. And family and the relationships there. That's all. That's the key to happiness. I live in the present. Living in the present is absolutely essential to happiness, I think. You have an awareness of everything that's about you and going on, and that's something I've learned over time.
Let me read you a sentence. It's the opening line. I'm trying to write this. I told you I'm trying to write this, working through this memoir, and I write an opening line. And tell me how this stands with you. I mean, it's two. Nope, I'm sorry, it's three sentences. Life does not invite me to build my future. Instead, my role is to observe, participate, and embrace. Let the future be the present, and let the present be whatever it may. But
That sounds
like you.
it sounds
Except,
very similar. Yeah.
yeah, it's just what comes up. You just follow it, do it.
Yeah. Do it.
And you had much more of a plan than I had. I was very dedicated to my careers. Whatever career I had, I was very dedicated. But when it came time to change, I knew it was time to change. And I would change something every 7 to 10 years. That was kind of my space that I had to do. Maybe not, sometimes major changes and sometimes just tweaks, but that took me in a very different direction. You were able to stay in the same space for 40 years, but that space, that had to change in what you did, evolve.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you could very much be passed by people if you did not evolve with it. We always had to be aware of what was happening and try to be the first to make a change, not the last. And so we were a very small organization, but with a lot of clout.
I have one final question. A word that comes up for people our age is legacy. And I'm very clear on what my legacy, what I want to be. Are you clear on what kind of legacy you want to leave?
I am, and I think this discussion has kind of encapsulated it. I want people to think of me as having been creative and and multifaceted and a good business person and a good family, good father to the family. Those are the things that are important to me.
What types of things in your legacy would you like to, are there parts of your legacy that you would like to impact the world? When I say the world, I mean your world, the world that you can influence.
When I was in business, I always said we should think in terms of every day coming in here and changing the world for the better, using our models, our system, and educating people about how important communication is to impact the world and their position in the world. And that's kind of the legacy that I think is relevant, not to me, but to kind of my energy field, is like, we can change the world. Anyone can change the world if you really have a vision for what you want to do and how you want to do it, and communicate it consistently, clearly over time.
And you know what, my friend? You just now that we've spent almost 2 hours together, in that time, that is what you do. That is a legacy. That is the legacy that you leave out there. That is what is remembered, what is left, is to make things better, to be adventurous, to go out, do something different, do where your passion is, and whatever you do, make sure it's who you really are, not who somebody else is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Dr. James Gregory. Now I get to call you Dr. James Gregory. It is such a pleasure chatting with you.
It's been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
It's just too bad we're 4,000 or 5,000 miles away from each other. It'd be fun. We would be friends.
Yes, I agree. We're only a phone call away, so anytime,
I've got your number now. I may chat, give you a call, and we could just chat about life, the universe, and everything.
I'd be happy to review your writing, your memoir as you're working on that. Happy to do it. It just, it's fun.
That's very gracious of you. Thank you, my friend.
You bet.
I also want to thank everybody for tuning in to the next chapter with Charlie. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.